everyone, and welcome to the Empowering Women podcast. And welcome to summer for those of you who love it, and for people like me who maybe not. It has certainly been hot so far. And today we're going to discuss some hot topics, and that pun is intended, such as your career strategy and story. And in my mind, it is great timing because most of us sort of stop in the middle of the year and say, are things going where we want them to go? We want to do something different in the back half of the year. So I think it is a great time to have that conversation. And today's guest is perfect to help challenge us all on that story. Tiffany Waddell Tate. I met her in an employee resource group and we connected immediately. I knew that she was a rock star and I felt so blessed to have her as part of that group. She is a master coaching professional, and she helps us learn, lead, and grow at work while being true to our authentic selves and building our personal brand. And I cannot wait for you to meet and learn from her. So welcome, Tiffany, to the podcast.
Thanks, Shannon. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you today. Thank you for inviting me. We are wearing our Power Red, which is fun. So I'm sure it's going to be a great conversation.
We are both wearing our Power Red for people who are not watching the video. So maybe you go grab your Power, put us on pause, grab your Power Red and go sit back down. All right. Again, I said I was so excited when you got on the screen today. I'm like, Tiffany, I've missed you. And I'm excited for our listeners to have the opportunity to meet you. We always start with people's stories. That's my favorite place to start on the podcast. So tell us a little bit more about your journey and what brought you to this place.
Absolutely. So I usually tell people that my career journey started in higher education. I am a graduate of Wake Forest University, actually a double deke. I went there twice. And when I graduated undergrad, I wasn't 100% sure about what I wanted to do. I had a brief stint where I thought I wanted to be a working artist and pursue theater stage direction. Theater was one of my majors in college. And I thought for 5 seconds, I can go and be a starving artist. Luckily, that did not happen.
Luckily for us all.
Luckily, that didn't happen. I'm still a big fan of the arts. And I owe a great credit to that experience in helping me come out of my shell, stop being shy, find my voice and all of that. And essentially, it was my first kind of crash course in taking a concept to implementation, working with a bunch of different experts, different people around the stage. And so it's helped me a lot in my career. But after I finished undergrad, I stuck around and worked for my alma mater as a graduate assistant and had a few kind of odd jobs in the community. I was teaching, working in the student center. And then I started my professional career in higher education. So I was in academic advising, supporting students with their college journey. And I was doing so much work with our career center at the time that they said, hey, you're working with us all the time. Why don't you just come upstairs and work in here? And so I jumped into college career development and really found my place. I love that work. I love coaching. I love curriculum design. I love training and development. And so I did that for a few years, left, went to another private institution in the Southeast to lead their career and professional development and student-facing work, did a ton of great work there, had a lot of fun, became a mom during that time, all that jazz. And then I came back home to my alma mater for a development role. So I spent the better part of a decade in higher education, really helping college students and alumni of those programs think about how to find good work and do good work on purpose. And then I pivoted into corporate doing HR leadership development during the pandemic, which is where we met, and was focused on manager effectiveness, manager development work. And on the side, just somewhere in there between the higher education roles and going corporate, I started what is now known as Career Maven as a little bit of a freelance respond to requests. I didn't actually have intent on being a business owner. I'm an accidental entrepreneur in many ways, but I realized that, people were asking me for support with things like career branding. So when I started out, I wrote resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles for executives, and had a partnership with an executive search firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so that grew. People were asking for help all the time. And then I realized, I can solve for this and start creating courses or digital products so people can kind of shortcut their work, but I don't have to necessarily do it. And then during the pandemic, I said, okay, I'm grounded. I'm not traveling and running events or facilitating workshops. I'm at home with a preschooler fighting for my life. So
I was going to say, I'm not sure that was quote unquote downtime, but we'll keep going.
Yeah. But with the extra time that I had back from no commuting, no flying around, I used that time to tinker with my brand, hired a business coach, and then started building out like what is our clear service line, getting really clear on what type of business I want to have, and trademarked a few things, and then just committed to it, still while working full time. And so that's kind of the long story short of how I've gotten to this place. Is I've always been a 100% person. So if it's a job or a community volunteer role or whatever I'm doing, if I'm going to do it, I believe deeply in giving it full freight. Otherwise, why do it? And so that's really brought me here in helping people think about how to find and essentially do good work on purpose. And that's what our company does.
I love that. Good work on purpose. That's going in the show notes. I love that phrase. That's fantastic. And I had no idea you had that much career coaching background, because it's a jungle out there. And if it's not something you do all the time, you're just like, what am I supposed to put on a resume? What don't you put on your resume anymore? What is your LinkedIn profile supposed to look like? I don't know. And then you're just, you start reading. And I think the more you read, the more you get confused.
Yeah. And like my thing, originally it was like, how can I, I went to a school that invested a ton in career development resources, and I was really lucky to have mentors, but how do you sort of widen access to this learning and help people who are not either early talent or emerging executives? Because it's really the middle that usually misses out on these resources. True. So even though I help both ends of the spectrum, the middle is really where our business is focused, to help sort of lay people, if you will, in the workforce understand and really grow confidence in these areas.
It's funny that you say that, because I'm a hiring manager, so I'm looking at resumes, and I will often, even if they don't have a LinkedIn profile, go to their LinkedIn, because I just want to see, like, to me, it's an intro to social media savviness, and how do they know about their brand? Can they communicate? Because that's the core part of our role. And it's amazing to me how sparse, they'll call it, that they are. And I'm like, oh yeah, we need to work on some of this. But anyway, I digress. As you mentioned, you own your own business, Career Maven Consulting. I will put that link in the show notes. But I love this statement I found on your website. It says, own your career story and unlock the life you want as a CEO of your personal and professional life. And I've often found that we create the thing we need for ourselves. So how has this statement played out in your life?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the root of much of the work that we do with individual customers or businesses or business organizational partners is to really help professionals get clear on what they want, build the confidence to, upskill in the areas that they need to, communicate their career story, and then activate agency to go after what they want. And many people, including myself, spent a long time, working and playing around, and, let's just say maybe the good Lord and some good friends protected me, but because I've had some great jobs and worked with some great people. But in my life, I think I was so fixated, like many people are when you're in a traditional college space, to pick a major that's going to lead to a specific job or job set or set of job options, and explore this sort of straight line path. But most careers are not like that. Mine certainly hasn't been like that. When I was 16, if you'd asked me what I wanted to be, I would have said, oh, I want to be a clinical psychologist or an attorney. And I went into college with those two paths in mind. And I clearly didn't do either one of those things, for good reason. And then even when you get into the world of work and you're doing really well in a particular role or an industry, and even if you like it, let's assume you like it and you're having a really positive experience, things change. Your family structure can change. Your interests can change. You can move to a new place. And so you could have external catalysts or internal values changes. Once I grew my family, my orientation to work changed quite a bit. I still care about my work and probably work too much. But becoming a parent helped me get really clear on the types of environments I did not want to be in,
Mm.
that I probably would have stayed in longer had I not become a parent and just, decided I want a better quality of life when I sign out of work or I come home. So I share all that to say that I think part of my coaching practice is helping people not just react to things that are happening to them, but be really thoughtful about what their non-negotiables are, what they want to learn, what they want to earn, and get comfortable naming those things, talking about them, and making decisions based on those things rather than just responding to situations that they find themselves in.
Yeah, that's so true. I think so many of us, for me, it was like, I'm going to go get an engineering degree and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And the funny part is it almost never works out that way. There are some people that go in engineering and stay in engineering the rest of their life. But many of us go, wonder what this whole sales thing looks like. Or, I
Mm-hmm.
love this whole people development thing. Maybe I'll try human resources.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost never a straight line that you expected it to be.
Yeah. And even if you do become an engineer and remain an engineer until retirement, you're a person first. You're not just a professional. So
Right.
you can also make decisions about what does your life look like outside of work to make sure that it's fulfilling and balanced, because sometimes people over index on what their work identity is. And I did for a long time.
Mm,
And if that changes, if something about that changes, sometimes you can lose yourself. And so I think it's really important.
mm.
Um, we said take charge of your personal and professional life because I think people should get really clear on what matters to them as humans who are working, so they have thoughtful intention in both spheres.
I love that because my passion is human centric leadership. And I feel like we
Mm-hmm.
go to work and we're like, oh, I am a person at work and these people on my team are people at work. No, they're humans. And yes, they are humans that are working with you on things, but they're
Mm-hmm.
very holistic, multifaceted humans that are
Mm-hmm.
honestly pretty fascinating and that you're learning more about them every day.
Well, you're a good leader, Shannon. Not everyone has that mindset. So
Oh, that's
I,
so
I think the
so
fact
kind.
that yeah, so the fact that you have that mindset and have kept it at your level of success is the mark of a really good character, which brings us back to that like person, like who you are as a person does matter. It doesn't matter if you're super smart and super skilled. If you lose the sort of empathy button, then you're gonna lose every time. You lose your people, and you're not gonna have
Mm.
sustainable success.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you have a story or maybe it's a collection of stories of your clients on how this has played out? I'm just curious on one of your clients how this has played out, maybe how they've changed their story or own their story. I'm curious if there's
Mm-hmm.
one you can share, obviously anonymously. We don't want to call anybody out here.
Sure. Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I've had really cool clients, right? They're all very unique and different, even though my coaching framework has a sort of a schema to how we work together. But I'm thinking about one client right now who was a product manager. She sort of grew up in the company you may know it as Honest Tea. It was known as something else when they first started, and then when
Yep.
they got
I've
really
heard
big,
about
they were
them.
Honest
Yeah.
Tea. Yeah. So she started pretty early on in that brand's journey, grew up in the company and held several roles, but was really focused on the product of that later behemoth. And when I met them, they were very eager to stay in the product management space, but wanted to sort of stretch into a bigger role, potentially at a bigger company. But they'd only been there. So they thought, like, I'm not going to have a lot of options, because most people who step into those director level roles have been in other like bigger CPG companies. They've had varied
Right.
experiences, et cetera. And so by the time we finished working together, I don't know why my computer is moving, but we'd gotten,
It's the
she'd gotten,
power red. It's like magnetizing the
I just realized I'm like off camera. Okay. But by the time we finished working together, she landed a role at Whole Foods slash Amazon.
Yeah.
And she moved halfway across the country.
Oh, wow.
And so she not only landed the type of role she was looking for, but she also, she had some other sort of personal interests of creating a new community, kind of getting out there, at her stage of life. She wanted to meet new people and just be in a sort of a different type of metro area. So she moved to Austin and,
Wow.
kind of set up a new life, which is a huge change. on top of a big job change. So, we kept working together after the transition, but I think that person is a great example of having incredible skill, and like she had done some incredible work, but wasn't always sure that it was enough for the next opportunity. And
Mm,
so, I think helping people get really clear on both what they want is obviously part of the journey, the clarity part, but then the confidence part is to be able to say fully confidently, like, yeah, I designed this product strategy. I did this thing, and our company went from, X revenue to this revenue. And I was a big part of that. And I'm excited to do that at this next company, and to be able to do that consistently.
mm.
And then be really clear on how much you want to make. I mean, we had a lot of conversations about salary. And when we started out, she was like, I don't know if that's possible. And I was like, well, it's not possible if you don't believe it is. I'm not encouraging people to go after, $1 million, realistic within the scope of the market. But I think people often undersell and they underpitch because they think they have to do more to prove themselves. But
Mm.
most of my clients have already, that's part of my thing, is you've already done a lot of the work. So let's, get you to the next part.
I'm curious. I missed the framework part, so I don't want to miss that with our audience.
Mm-hmm.
How can folks learn more about your framework? I don't know if you want to give a brief overview and then like direct them. Maybe you have an online course or something they can learn more.
For sure. I think if they go to our website, careermavenconsulting.com, they'll see more information about just our product line. We do have a self-paced job search course called Career Maven Academy. That will soon be a group coaching course if you're interested in that, but you can also work with me one-on-one. And the framework essentially for the career coaching side, so I'm not going to get into leadership development or any of
Right.
that, is clarity, confidence, and agency. So the clarity piece is getting really clear on what type of roles or industries you're interested in and lasering in on a target. So a lot of people will say, I'm open to anything. Well, it's hard to search for anything. Like we need a target.
Yeah, you're probably going to get a really long list if you do that.
Really
And to
long
your
list.
point,
You're gonna
it's
be
hard
stressed.
to target recruiters or
Mm-hmm.
maybe your connections at the company or something similar. Yeah, good point.
Exactly. It's also hard to do your resume and everything else if you aren't clear first. So I sort of invert the process that some coaches do. Some coaches will go straight into your branding materials, and I don't, because to me it's a waste of time if you don't know what story you want to tell. So we start with the clarity piece of sort of what are you aiming for and who are you? Like, what are your value adds? How much money do you want to make? What environment do you want to be in? What are your non-negotiables based on the work experience you've had? Then the confidence piece is, how do I craft my career story on a resume, on a LinkedIn, if I'm networking, if I'm in a conversation, that kind of thing, in an interview, what's happening? Okay. And I think, sorry, I put my computer on something, but we're here. And then the agency piece is putting it all together. So you are clear on what you want. You can communicate your career story effectively. You have started having networking conversations. You're probably having interviews. And the agency is based on those non-negotiables you decided up front, and they could change based on new data, but based on your non-negotiables, when you get a salary or a comp offer, then you are equipped to effectively negotiate because you understand your value in the market. You understand like comparable roles, and you also understand what you want. So you're not stepping into interviews like with a sort of mother may I hope you pick me energy. You're stepping in with like, this is a data mining exercise. I want to showcase my value as much as I want to understand, is this a company I want to share my talent with? Is this a place I'm going to grow or not? So you're making a decision from that sort of agency mindset versus I'm just reacting because I really want a job. And like, don't get me wrong, we all need to be employed and we have bills, but it totally changes how you even orient yourself to the workplace. And what we're doing sort of with that job search strategy, you carry with you into the work, because you should still be clear when you're working with your manager or your leader. And you should still be able to confidently negotiate for yourself, even once you're inside of an organization.
Oh, that's so true. That is some of the best advice I've heard in a long time. You need to go look at that. Even if you're looking to stay in your own company, I think it's good to still be clear about what you want, be able to articulate it, and have resumes and such ready. So even if you're not looking to leave your current role or your current company, it's always good to have that thought process, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Absolutely. I mean, even on
Go ahead.
performance management processes, I coach people who are not looking for a job, but they want to level up in the organization where they are. And people often fumble on this, and they wait until whatever the company has prescribed as performance management time to start the conversation. And I'm like, your performance and your career advancement should always be part of the conversation. So it's always top of mind for whoever your leader or sponsors are, not just when it's like a time to check a box. By then, frankly, it's probably too late. So it is that framework really carries into the other, aspects of our coaching as well.
That is so true. Do not wait till the mid-year review, year-end review, whatever that looks like, wherever you are. Yeah, you should always be having that conversation and be ready to talk about it. Good point.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You and I both spend some time on LinkedIn. I think you do more than I do lately, but you put a post out there that I absolutely loved. It was around possibilities of why your application materials were not sticky enough. And sticky was actually, each letter stood for a word. Do you remember what sticky stands for?
Do I remember what sticky stands for? Maybe. Sometimes I write things and it's hard for me to remember. So I'm going to pull it up really quickly to make sure that I have.
Because I didn't actually write the different ones out, but
yeah. So I know sticky was definitely probably skill. Let me, if hopefully they'll edit this out. I'll just quickly find it. Sorry, Shannon. Got it. Okay, skill. So the S stands for skill-based. So your resume should always be focusing on the skills that you've leveraged in your work. I think sometimes people will go back to their job description and sort of list the tasks, but really, ideally, your resume should be focused on skills language, which is the value add, what can you do, and then how did what you do add value to the organization. Your resume should be tailored. So we always want to do the hard work first to make sure our resume is optimized for skill language and value add language, but then tailor it for the position and the organization that you're sending it to. And making sure that you are matching as many of those keywords as you can, right? You have to be honest, but an example of that might be when I was in higher education and I was doing coaching and professional development. Then my resume probably over-indexed on the coaching, the relationship building across campus, the event planning. Then when I went into corporate, I was doing more curriculum design, less one-on-one coaching, program management, vendor management. And so I elevated the language where I talked about those aspects of my previous roles because it was directly relevant for what I was applying for. So the intentionality is really important. C is for confident. And we might not always feel confident when we're applying to jobs. I also experience imposter syndrome. But the idea is that your resume and other career branding documents should showcase your best foot forward and be focused on impact. So you're not good at everything. It's not possible. But the things that you are good at, you should definitely be sharing that story because that's what people are hiring you for because it has mobility across organization. The K is for keep it real. Resume speak obviously is a very different writing than how we typically write for other things, but it's also important to know your audience. So if you've worked in big corporate and I'm an HR girly, so I use a lot of corporate lingo sometimes when I'm dealing with corporate clients, but that doesn't translate nicely into the nonprofit space always or wherever you're headed. So you want to be thoughtful that you're not using acronyms or jargon that's super specific to a place if the place you're applying doesn't use some of that same language. And then finally, the Y is you. So at the end of the day, your branding documents are, your resume and things are showcasing the talent that you have. But when you get into an interview, you're also a person. So we want to talk about our value add, but we also want to talk about our aspirations. We want to ask good questions, and we also want to be ourselves as much as, is professionally possible, because you're going to spend a lot of time with these people and you don't want to just be sort of a resume representative. You also want to be a real human as well.
Yeah, good point. I think that first one really resonates with me, the skills one. And this is one that I've struggled with myself. So I've had more what I call a portfolio career. So I've not gone into one function and stayed and done different roles in that function. And so I think even, internally in my current company, people are like, what do you do with her? Because she's worked in manufacturing and she's worked in procurement and now she's working in product management. Like, I don't understand. So I think those skills are so important, and highlighting those skills in your resume and showing how you use those skills to get results for the places that you've been. That's probably the best advice I think you could have given anybody.
Absolutely. And I think for people who've had a portfolio career, Shannon, I often tell people that you can add a little career summary at the top. So not an objective statement like 1985, I want X job, not that, but a summary that is more of a high level overview of the signature skills that you have, so that you are making sort of sense making at the top of your resume before you get into those different functions you've held. Because I think sometimes it's hard for people to narrate, well, what's my value add if I've done something different in each of these stops? And so you can pull out like, who is Shannon and what is Shannon really good at, regardless of where you drop her. And then you get into the use case examples with each of the job entries that you have.
Great advice. I hope whoever the folks that are listening, I hope you're taking notes, because she's giving you a master class in how to look for like that next role and the role after, and how to plan that out for yourself. So speaking of that, I would jokingly call myself a bit seasoned in my career. I'm not exactly early career. And I was thinking about, as I was preparing for this, what would my older self would love to tell the younger version? And what I'd love to tell the younger version is sort of where we started. What does an agile career strategy look like? So how do you not get fixated in one silo or train or part of the ladder? So what does having a career strategy mean to you?
Yeah, I think having a career strategy can mean having a really clear, like, these are a list of the things I want to learn or do, or the problems I want to solve. Or having a career strategy could be like, what are your known boundaries, right? Like, not everyone's going to make a decision to change careers for the same reasons. But I'll give you an example of my career strategy has always included, once I feel like I'm not learning anything, I typically will move on, because learning and being sort of challenged intellectually is important to me at work. I am not I have a friend from really early in my career who always said to me, and I didn't understand what he meant until I got older, but he said, you're not a 9-to-5er. Some people are 9-to-5ers and they're comfortable clocking in and leaving. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not you, because you leave and you're thinking about things and you're coming back with ideas. And so I've always known, before I even had the language around career coaching, that I need to be in an environment where I am either improving processes, or I'm helping solve a problem, or I'm like bringing people together to grow things. And once I'm not learning things or feeling challenged, it starts to get boring. And so then I need to do something else. For other people, it might be that they've hit their earning capacity, and then it's time to go, right? So you need to know, like, what are my personal catalysts? And it's okay for those things to change or get a little quieter for different seasons, right? Like when I had a newborn, I was not thinking about moving anywhere. I just wanted to.
You were thinking about getting sleep, Tiffany.
Yes, I just wanted to just keep it together. But now I'm like, okay, I want to make sure that I am always doing something that's going to make an impact. I want to make sure that my earning cap is, equitable and growing, because, I'm in the high earning years. And then I also want to make sure that I'm learning or challenged. But for other people, they might have slightly different values. And I think having a really solid career strategy is being really clear on what matters to you, and scheduling time to reflect on it often, because those things can change.
Yeah, you just answered my next question was going to be like, how often do you review it? But it's almost like maybe you kind of set intervals in your head and you're like, okay, am I still on track, so to say, with these different boundaries, for lack of a better word, or places that I put out there for myself?
Yeah, I mean, I think at least once a year. Like, if you think about it, we do this cycle for organizations, but I have a personal practice where I set goals in sort of the professional quadrant, my health quadrant, finances, family. And then I have recently added a fun category because I realized that I really don't have a lot of fun. And my therapist was
I
like,
don't
you
have a
need to
lot
do
of fun
that.
either, Tiffany. So maybe I need to learn from you.
She's like, do you have fun? I was like, I'm sorry, what? And so
What
that's
is
something I now
fun?
have to, right. I'm like, what is that? But I realized that if I don't create space for it, I don't have room for creativity. Like, so play is really important. So, anyways, I think once a year, usually towards the end of the year, I will chart some goals in those buckets, and then I'll check in midway through to see, like, okay, where am I tracking on these, and make adjustments where I need to. And then at the end of the year again, I see, like, okay, what did I accomplish that can be replaced? What did I not accomplish that needs to carry on to the next year? I think we should totally be doing that when we think about our career and our lives holistically, and not just like what's right in front of us right now. Because it's super easy to get bogged down in what's right in front of us right now, because, you know, for most people, our jobs take up more time than anything else. But so if we aren't careful, it's really easy to like kind of sort of put your blinders on. And next thing you know, it's 10 years later and you're like, oh, I haven't done anything for myself.
You know, it's interesting. So one of my favorite phrases is ignite your fire within. And I think if you're doing that, maybe you're reigniting that spark all the time. Because to your point, you can get head down in the weeds of whatever and then
Mm-hmm.
forget like what you're really trying to accomplish. So if you're doing that, then you're pulling yourself back out of the swamp sometimes and saying, "Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still up here."
I'm still here. Yeah. And, you know, I think I've always sort of carried this mantra, but I think on the other side of the pandemic, to be honest, things have felt so much more compressed or sort of a little like frenetic. Like it feels like everything's on a flywheel. Maybe that's just me, but I don't want to
You just
lose
made
some
me
of.
feel a lot better because I've been feeling that way.
I
So
really,
maybe
I'm like,
it's just a
what's
collective
happening?
societal issue.
Probably, but I just don't want to lose some of what we gained during that time. And it was a really difficult time for a lot of people. And I also found that I had a great privilege of being forced to slow down in a way that I can't replicate. I don't necessarily want to replicate, but there are aspects of that as I sort of mature in my career journey, like you just can't be on tilt all the time. You just can't. It's just not healthy. And so I think in the same way you have to be intentional about your career, I think just remembering your personhood matters too, because otherwise it's like, you know, you never know like when or how life is going to pivot or pause or God forbid stop. And so sort of right now is what we have. And I think you can be really thoughtful about right now as you're planning for the future.
I love that. Again, I hope all of you are taking notes. She's giving you a master class. Um, I'm going to pivot a little bit. I mentioned on the
Okay.
outset, you and I had met in an employee resource group. So I know we're both very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I was preparing for this podcast. I went into your Career Maven shop and I noticed you have a course entitled How to Be an Ally for Black Women at Work. Can you the course really intrigued me, to be honest. So this is selfishly my question today. Can you tell us more about this class? Like, how did it come about? What are key learnings you try to get across with your clients? I'm just really insanely curious about the class and what that looks like.
For sure. So that class is actually a two-part recording and a workbook from a live session I did with a few other practitioners during the pandemic, myself, and two women who at the time were DEI leaders in different industries. And we were having a conversation about one, what is the landscape for Black women professionally? What are some of the challenges that Black women face in work? It's not industry specific, but we cite quite a few statistics about sort of the drop off point for Black women. So, as an example, Black women consistently year over year, compared to any other demographic, are the most educated in the US, but are the least represented in leadership roles across industries. So, there's like a mismatch between attaining, you know, all these degrees and all this stuff, and then there isn't like sort of an infrastructure of pipeline and pipeline progression for Black women through organizations. So we sort of set the tone with like, what does the research say? And then we talk a little bit about, okay, what does it mean to be an ally in action, whether you identify as a Black woman or not? how do you support Black and Brown women, especially in your workplace, whether you're a peer to someone, you're a key decision maker that can impact sort of system-wide change, or in your individual sort of learning practice, what are the things that you could do to be more aware of how your individual or organizational behavior basically perpetuates some of these barriers, right?
Mm.
And so we're having a conversation about that. And then it was so popular during the pandemic that we did a part 2 where we answered as many of the questions that the audience submitted as we could in about an hour, 75 minutes or so. And then we created a workbook so that as you're listening to the recordings, you can follow along to capture key takeaways and then make an action plan for your own professional practice. Like the idea is like, we don't just want to give people information. We also want to equip you with like tools that you can use regardless of what your level of leadership is within an organization. And so it's a great sort of short course for an individual learner, but it's also great if you want to do it with a group at your organization and then, you know, facilitate a talk back or next steps.
I'm definitely going to go take it myself, and I'm going to put the link in the show notes because I think as a white female, the truth is we've not had a very good history with supporting Black women. And I think the only way to change that is to listen, learn, and then figure out, to your point, how to take those learnings into action. That's helpful, not hurtful.
Yeah, that's helpful and not hurtful. And then Shannon, I did a couple of articles on this topic during the pandemic too. So if you Google that and my name, one of them is at, I think, the Every Girl or the Everymom. And it's just sort of a quick, like, what are some of the things that an ally in action at work can do? And they're not necessarily, I think people think like you have to do this like heavy lift, but it's like, actually, sometimes it's just like sharing your pay, like making pay transparent. I have colleagues who, you know, as an entrepreneur will tell me, hey, at this conference, I got paid X amount. I want to make sure that you are meeting that or higher, you know, like that can make a big difference in a professional's life in terms of pay equity. Or it could be something like if you see something, say something. So it could be disrupting the flow in a meeting. If someone's getting talked over or their ideas are never really heard, right? Like if you have your antennas up for this, you'll notice you can slow the pace down in a meeting and make sure that the Black and Brown women in your sort of purview are heard. Even if their idea doesn't land and it isn't where you're headed, it can go a long way in making someone feel included, that you're sort of advocating for them in a quiet way too. It doesn't always have to be loud.
Yeah, I actually I would align with you that I think it's the smaller actions that often matter because those small actions add up over time. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have 2 final questions for you.
Okay.
What is coming up for Career Maven Academy? Like, what are you excited about either in the remainder of 2024 or into 2025?
So many things. So the Career Maven Academy job search class that I mentioned earlier that is available DIY on our website, we are going to be changing that into a group coach or adding a group coaching option as we head into the second part of the year. So you'll see more about that online soon because I think that will make my coaching a little bit more accessible for people who can't afford one-on-one coaching. I'm also really excited because I've partnered with another business owner to host a Paris pivot trip in September. So a group of women are coming with us across the pond and we'll do some art, culture tours, all that good fun stuff in Paris, but we'll also be doing some career exploration and career design work together. And so that's going to be fun. And then in 2025, I have a few things up my sleeve, but soon you will be seeing more on the internet. I've been working on a book for a while.
Oh, that's exciting. I had no idea.
Yeah, I'm slow moving there, but my intention is to release that in early 2025, and also start to sort of separate my personal brand from the company a bit. So you'll see some other coaches in our ecosystem and information about them online, and we're just hoping to like partner with more organizations to provide access to career development and talent advisory work.
That is so exciting. I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
Thank you.
Please invite me to a book party because we're physically close to one another. So either in person or virtually. When you release, I want to be there, Tiffany.
Thank you.
All right. My final question that I typically ask is, what one piece of advice or quote would you like to leave with the listeners? Can be either.
Ooh. Okay. Piece of advice. Okay, I'll give a piece of advice. The piece of advice I would like to leave everyone is no matter how awesome your manager is or how awesome your job is, you can love it. There's nothing wrong with that. Is to never get so married and connected to a job that you forget that it's a value exchange. So you are providing value for value in return. And it is okay to decide at any point that you want to provide value elsewhere, because organizations cannot love you back. So that is the piece of advice I would like to give, especially women in industry, because sometimes we work so hard to get into our seats that we feel like we can't give it up. But you really have to view yourself as a free agent that has sovereignty so that you are not giving more to an organization than it can return to you.
Oh my goodness. I can't even go after that. That's one of the best pieces of advice I have heard in a long time. Cause I think we all get into a space and we're like, well, I love the team I work with, or I love this and that part of my job. And then we get so entrenched in that space that we don't think about what's best for us, either short term or long term.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's a mic drop right there, guys.
Yeah,
so
mic drop.
I will put all of Tiffany's links in the show notes, including the classes that we talked about today. Please follow her on LinkedIn. She posts a lot of great content. You can see her beautiful face on videos that she puts out there. Please follow her. You will love her. And Tiffany, was so amazing to see you today. Thank you so much for being with us and for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you for having me, Shannon. This is so fun.
It is fun. All right. Bye, everybody. See you soon.